something. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize a painful truth. The world does not reward kindness alone. It rewards strength that hides behind calmness. Toxic people are not looking for good people. They are searching for easy people. Something. They test your patience before they respect your character. They study your reactions before deciding how far they can push you. They don't fear loud voices. They don't fear angry words. They fear something much rarer, a person who has mastered themselves. Something. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one who argues the loudest. It is the one who cannot be emotionally controlled, the one who remains calm while everyone else loses balance, the one who never begs, never explains, never chases something, and never reveals the storm hidden behind silent eyes. Silence has always been misunderstood as weakness, but history has proven something different. Silence is often the language of power. The strongest minds rarely announce their strength. The wisest people rarely advertise their intelligence. The most respected leaders never waste energy convincing people they deserve respect. Toxic people survive by feeding on emotional reactions. They provoke, they manipulate, they insult, they guilt trip something. They create chaos because chaos gives them control. But when they meet someone who refuses to play their game, fear quietly replaces confidence, not because you threaten them, but because they suddenly realize they cannot predict you. In today's journey, you will discover 7 silent behaviors that make toxic people instantly afraid of you. These are not tricks. These are habits of emotional mastery. Behaviors that quietly build an invisible wall no manipulator can climb, because true power is never noisy. It is deeply controlled. Most people spend their entire lives trying to become stronger by changing the world around them. Very few understand that real power begins when you stop allowing the world to change you. Every toxic relationship follows the same invisible pattern. Someone wants control. Someone gives away control. The moment you stop offering your emotions as free entertainment, the balance shifts. This is why emotionally disciplined people seem mysterious. Not because they hide secrets, but because they no longer hand strangers the keys to their peace. Think about every person who has ever intimidated you without saying much. They probably weren't the loudest. They weren't desperate for attention. They carried something impossible to fake, inner certainty. That certainty unsettles toxic people because manipulation only works where uncertainty lives. When someone no longer seeks constant approval, the manipulator loses their greatest weapon. When someone refuses to argue unnecessarily, conflict loses its audience. When someone quietly walks away instead of begging to be understood, control disappears. The strongest boundaries are rarely spoken. They are demonstrated. Every day you will encounter people who test your patience. Some will question your value. Some will challenge your confidence. Some will attempt to provoke emotions they can later use against you. Remember this. Your first reaction becomes their first piece of information. The calmer you remain, the less information you give away. Power has always belonged to those who can think while everyone else is reacting. Your emotions are priceless. Do not hand them out to anyone demanding free access, because every unnecessary explanation weakens your position. Every desperate defense tells people where your insecurities live. Every emotional outburst teaches toxic people exactly which buttons to press next time. Emotional discipline is not suppression. It is intelligent direction. It is choosing your response instead of becoming someone else's reaction. People often confuse silence with surrender, but there are 2 kinds of silence. One is the silence of fear. The other is the silence of confidence. Fear stays quiet because it feels powerless. Confidence stays quiet because it has nothing to prove. Never confuse the two. The person who has mastered silence has also mastered patience. And patience is terrifying to those who rely on urgency. Manipulators rush. Wise people observe. Manipulators demand answers. Wise people collect information. Manipulators chase attention. Wise people protect attention. Attention is your greatest currency. Where it goes, your life follows. Every moment you spend trying to convince someone of your worth is a moment stolen from becoming feeling worthy in your own eyes. Stop negotiating your values. Stop explaining your boundaries. Stop announcing your next move. Create confidence speaks long before words ever begin. People eventually reveal themselves, not because you interrogated them, but because silence made them uncomfortable enough to expose themselves. The patient observer always learns more than the impatient speaker. There is tremendous power in becoming emotionally unreadable, not cold, not cruel, simply centered. When people cannot manipulate your feelings, they begin questioning their own behavior. That uncertainty becomes your greatest protection. The goal is never to make toxic people fear you. Fear is simply the natural consequence of becoming someone they can no longer control. The moment they realize guilt no longer works, pressure no longer works, drama no longer works, emotional blackmail no longer works, they lose the only language they ever learned. Your greatest revenge is not proving them wrong. It is becoming unreachable by their games, because peace is the one thing manipulation cannot survive around. Real confidence does not arrive after people respect you. People begin respecting you after confidence quietly arrives within you. Strength is not measured by how many battles you win. It is measured by how many unnecessary battles you refuse to fight. The world constantly rewards emotional discipline, while emotional chaos quietly destroys potential. Become the person whose presence alone changes the atmosphere, the person whose silence carries more weight than another person's endless arguments. The person who protects their mind as carefully as others protect their money, because your peace is worth more than winning any temporary argument. And the 7 silent behaviors you are about to discover are not merely habits. They are the invisible language of people who have become impossible to manipulate. Most people believe strength is measured by how loudly you defend yourself. They think power is found in the perfect comeback, the sharpest argument, or the ability to dominate every conversation. But life quietly teaches a different lesson. The people who truly possess influence are rarely the ones competing for attention. They understand something that most never learn. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the highest expression of self-control. Toxic people spend their lives searching for reactions because reactions give them information. Every burst of anger, every emotional explanation, every desperate attempt to prove yourself becomes another piece of the puzzle they use to understand how to manipulate you. They do not need to defeat your intelligence if they can simply control your emotions. The moment you react without thinking, you hand them exactly what they came looking for. Observe how manipulation always begins. It rarely starts with an obvious attack. It begins with a small comment disguised as humor, a subtle insult hidden inside a compliment, an unnecessary criticism, or a question designed to make you defend yourself. These moments are not accidents, they are tests. Toxic people test your emotional stability before deciding how much control they can gain over you. Every response you give becomes data. If you become angry, they discover your temper. If you become defensive, they discover your insecurity. If you rush to explain yourself, they discover your need for approval. Without realizing it, you reveal your emotional blueprint. Silence interrupts this entire process. It gives them nothing to study. It denies them the emotional reward they expected to receive. Imagine throwing a stone into a lake and discovering there are no ripples. That unexpected stillness creates discomfort because people who rely on emotional chaos cannot understand emotional discipline. They expect resistance. They expect excuses. They expect outrage. Instead, they are met with calm eyes and quiet confidence. Suddenly, they are forced to question themselves instead of controlling you. This does not mean silence is passive. Passive people remain silent because they are afraid. Powerful people remain silent because they are in control. There is an enormous difference between the two. Fearful silence is filled with anxiety, hoping conflict will disappear. Confident silence is filled with certainty, knowing conflict does not deserve attention. One comes from weakness, the other comes from strength. Toxic people instinctively recognize this difference. They can sense hesitation, but they are deeply unsettled by someone who chooses silence without fear. Emotional reactions are expensive. Every argument drains your energy. Every unnecessary explanation steals your focus. something. Every attempt to convince someone who has already decided to misunderstand you costs a piece of your peace. Toxic individuals understand this better than most people realize. They know they do not have to destroy your confidence overnight. They only need to exhaust you a little each day. One unnecessary argument today, another tomorrow, a little guilt next week, a little drama after that. Eventually, your energy belongs to them instead of your own goals. Silence protects your energy. It allows you to decide which battles deserve your attention and which deserve your absence. Not every accusation requires an answer. Not every insult deserves a defense. Not every opinion demands correction. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you because misunderstanding gives them an excuse to continue their behavior. Trying to convince them otherwise only keeps you trapped inside a game designed for you to lose. The strongest individuals understand that attention is one of the most valuable resources they possess. Wherever attention goes, life follows. If your attention constantly chases conflict, your life becomes filled with conflict. If your attention constantly seeks approval, your confidence becomes dependent on other people. But when your attention remains focused on growth, discipline, and purpose, your life slowly transforms into the reflection of those priorities. Silence becomes the guardian of that attention. It refuses to waste precious energy on distractions disguised as emergencies. There is also a hidden psychological effect that silence creates. Human beings naturally try to fill empty spaces. When you refuse to react immediately, the other person begins imagining what you might be thinking. Their certainty disappears. They replay their own words in their mind. They begin questioning whether they crossed a line. The conversation shifts without you saying anything. Instead of managing your emotions, they begin wrestling with their own. This reversal is subtle but incredibly powerful. The manipulator becomes uncertain because uncertainty has finally entered their own mind instead of yours. Silence also gives you something reactions never can: perspective. Emotions rise quickly, but wisdom arrives slowly. When you react immediately, you borrow tomorrow's regret to satisfy today's impulse. A calm pause creates room for clear thinking. You notice details that anger would have hidden. You recognize intentions that frustration would have overlooked. You separate facts from emotions. This ability to observe before responding is one of the greatest advantages a person can develop, because decisions made from clarity are almost always stronger than decisions made from emotion. Many people mistake immediate responses for confidence. They believe quick words demonstrate courage. In reality, instant reactions often reveal emotional dependence. Someone else pressed a button and you obeyed without realizing it. Real confidence cannot be controlled so easily. It decides when to speak and when to remain quiet. It chooses responses instead of surrendering to impulses. This level of discipline cannot be borrowed from motivational quotes or temporary inspiration. It is built through daily practice, one moment of restraint at a time. There will always be people who attempt to provoke you because provoking others is the only power they know. They feel important when someone loses emotional control because it creates the illusion that they are influencing the situation. The moment you stop participating, their influence disappears. They may become louder. They may become more dramatic. They may accuse you of being cold, arrogant, or uncaring. These reactions are often signs that your silence is working. When manipulation no longer produces results, manipulators frequently increase the pressure before they eventually lose interest. Remember that silence is not about avoiding every conversation. There are moments when truth must be spoken, injustice must be challenged, and boundaries must be clearly expressed. But even then, your words become far more powerful because they are chosen carefully instead of thrown carelessly. A calm sentence carries greater weight than an emotional speech. A controlled voice commands more respect than uncontrolled anger. People listen differently when they recognize that your words are intentional rather than impulsive. The greatest advantage of mastering silence is that it transforms you before it changes anyone else. You become less reactive reactive, less anxious, less dependent on the opinions of people who never wanted the best for you. You begin protecting your inner peace with the same seriousness that others protect their wealth. Over time, toxic people stop seeing you as an easy target because they no longer receive the emotional reward they once expected. They realize your mind cannot be pulled into every conflict, your emotions cannot be purchased with cheap insults, and your peace cannot be stolen by those who have never learned to create peace within themselves. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that boundaries become real only after they are explained. They spend hours trying to justify their decisions, hoping that if they choose the right words, everyone will finally understand. But toxic people do not ignore your boundaries because they are confused. They ignore them because they are testing whether your words have consequences. Every unnecessary explanation becomes an invitation for negotiation. Every long defense tells them there is still room to persuade you. The more you explain, the more they believe your limits are flexible. True boundaries are not built with speeches. They are built with consistent actions. A manipulative person is rarely interested in respecting your peace. They are interested in discovering its price. They want to know how much pressure it takes before you abandon your own standards. They begin with small requests that seem harmless, a favor you are uncomfortable giving, a conversation you no longer want to have, a commitment that drains your energy. If you hesitate but eventually give in, they learn something valuable. They learn that persistence defeats your principles. From that moment forward, every request becomes slightly larger because they already know resistance is temporary. This is why weak boundaries never remain weak for long. They eventually disappear altogether. Many people fear saying no because they believe rejection damages relationships. The truth is often the opposite. Healthy people respect clear boundaries because they understand that every human being deserves ownership over their time, emotions, and energy. Toxic individuals react differently. They become offended, argumentative, or dramatic because your boundary threatens the control they once enjoyed. Their discomfort is not proof that your decision is wrong. It is often proof that your decision is necessary. The people who become angry when you protect your peace are usually the ones who benefited most from your lack of protection. There is a hidden cost to constantly explaining yourself. Every explanation places your confidence on trial. Instead of making a decision because it aligns with your values, you begin searching for reasons that will satisfy everyone else. You slowly replace self-respect with approval. Your choices become less about what is right for your life and more about avoiding disappointment in others. Over time, this habit quietly erodes your identity. You forget that adulthood is not measured by how many people agree with your decisions. It is measured by your willingness to stand by them even when they are unpopular. Notice how confident people communicate their boundaries. They are calm, they are respectful, they are brief. They do not spend 20 minutes convincing someone why they deserve rest. They do not apologize repeatedly for protecting their schedule. They simply communicate their decision and allow it to stand on its own. This calm certainty unsettles manipulative people because it leaves no emotional opening to exploit. They cannot argue with endless explanations if no explanations are offered. They cannot twist your words if you refuse to provide unnecessary words. One of the most powerful phrases a person can learn is a simple, respectful no. It does not require anger. It does not require hostility. It does not require guilt. A genuine no is complete by itself. Yet many people immediately weaken it by adding endless qualifications. They say no, then apologize, then explain, then negotiate, then offer alternatives they never wanted to give. By the end of the conversation, the boundary has completely disappeared. Toxic people recognize this pattern immediately because they have encountered it countless times. They know that hesitation often leads to surrender. Your time is one of the few resources that can never be replaced. Once a day has passed, it belongs to history forever. Yet many people give away hours of their lives simply because they fear appearing rude. something. They attend conversations they dread, maintain relationships that constantly drain them, and solve problems that never belong to them. Every unnecessary obligation quietly steals attention from the dreams they claim to value. Boundaries protect more than your emotions. Something. They protect your future. Every time you refuse something that weakens your purpose, you create space for something that strengthens it. Another truth many people struggle to accept is that not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Society often teaches that availability equals kindness, but endless availability frequently creates disrespect instead of appreciation. People naturally value what has limits. If your attention is always free, many will begin treating it as if it has no value. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means recognizing that generosity without wisdom eventually becomes self-neglect. You cannot pour endlessly into others while ignoring the condition of your own mind. Manipulative people often respond to boundaries with emotional tactics rather than logical conversations. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish, difficult, or uncaring. They may remind you of everything they have supposedly done for you. They may even create guilt by acting wounded. These reactions are carefully designed to make you question yourself. The goal is not understanding. The goal is control. If guilt causes you to abandon your boundary once, they will remember exactly which emotional button works best the next time. This is why emotional stability matters more than verbal skill. You do not need the perfect argument every time someone challenges your decision. You need the courage to remain consistent, even when someone disapproves. Consistency creates credibility. If your boundaries change every time another person becomes emotional, they are no longer boundaries. They are temporary preferences waiting to be negotiated. Toxic individuals become experts at identifying this weakness because inconsistency is the doorway through which manipulation enters. Healthy boundaries are also an act of self-respect. Every decision communicates something about how you view yourself. If you constantly tolerate disrespect, people conclude that disrespect is acceptable. If you repeatedly sacrifice your peace to avoid conflict, others begin expecting that sacrifice as normal. Your behavior teaches people how to treat you far more effectively than your words ever could. Respect cannot be demanded from people while your actions continue accepting disrespect. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you stop explaining every choice. You begin trusting your own judgment. You no longer feel responsible for managing everyone's emotional reactions. You realize that another person's disappointment is not always evidence of your failure. Sometimes disappointment simply means they expected access to something they were never entitled to receive. That realization changes the way you move through the world. You become calmer because your decisions are guided by principles instead of pressure. Setting boundaries without explanation does not make you arrogant. It makes you emotionally disciplined. It allows your actions to speak where endless conversations once failed. Toxic people quickly recognize that they can no longer bargain with your values because your values are no longer open for discussion. They discover that persistence no longer changes your answer. Guilt no longer weakens your resolve. And emotional pressure no longer earns them unlimited access to your time, your energy, or your peace. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who cannot be emotionally predicted. Toxic people depend on patterns. They watch, they observe something, and they memorize your emotional habits until they know exactly which words will upset you, which situations will make you defensive, and which fears will force you into explaining yourself. They are not reading your mind. They are studying your reactions. Every emotional outburst becomes another lesson for them. Every visible frustration becomes another map leading directly to your weaknesses. The greatest advantage you can ever develop is refusing to become emotionally predictable. Most people think honesty means displaying every emotion the moment it appears. They believe authenticity requires immediate expression. But emotional maturity teaches a different lesson. Feeling something does not mean you must immediately reveal it. something. There is wisdom in allowing emotions to settle before deciding whether they deserve to be shared. A controlled response is not dishonesty, it is discipline. The strongest people are not those who never feel anger, disappointment, or frustration. Something. They are those who refuse to let temporary emotions become permanent decisions. Manipulative people often begin conversations with one hidden objective: to provoke a reaction. They may criticize your choices, question your intelligence, compare you to someone else, something, or make subtle remarks that attack your confidence. These comments are rarely accidental. They are carefully placed emotional hooks. The moment you become defensive, they know the hook has worked. Now the conversation is no longer about truth. It becomes about control. Something. They lead and you follow. Every emotional reaction gives them confirmation that they have entered your inner world. Imagine someone trying to unlock a door with a collection of keys. If every key fails, frustration slowly replaces confidence. Something. This is exactly what happens when toxic people encounter someone who refuses to react in expected ways. They expect anger but receive calmness. They expect fear but receive confidence. They expect endless explanations but receive quiet certainty. Suddenly, something. The methods that worked on everyone else stop working on you. The uncertainty they intended to create inside your mind begins growing inside theirs instead. Being emotionally unpredictable does not mean becoming cold or manipulative yourself. It means becoming stable. Something. There is a tremendous difference. Unstable people react differently because they are controlled by emotion. Stable people respond differently because they are guided by wisdom. One changes according to feelings. The other changes according to principles. Something. Toxic individuals cannot manipulate principles as easily as emotions because principles do not fluctuate every hour. They remain steady regardless of pressure. Something. One reason so many people become easy targets is because they advertise their emotional state without realizing it. The moment something goes wrong, everyone knows. Their face changes, their tone changes, their words become impulsive, their decisions become rushed. Something. While honesty has value, constant emotional transparency can become a vulnerability when dealing with people who exploit weakness. There is power in learning to carry yourself with composure even when life feels difficult. Composure does not deny emotion. Something. It simply refuses to surrender leadership to it. Life constantly presents situations that invite immediate reactions. An insulting message appears on your phone. A disrespectful comment reaches your ears. Someone spreads false information about you. Something. Every instinct tells you to respond immediately, yet immediate reactions are often emotional gifts to people who wanted exactly that. The strongest response is frequently delayed. Time allows emotion to settle while clarity rises. Something. Problems that seemed enormous in the first 5 minutes often appear much smaller after thoughtful reflection. Patience protects you from becoming a prisoner of the moment. Another powerful habit is refusing to reveal every future plan. Something. Many people speak about dreams before those dreams have taken shape. They announce every ambition, every opportunity, every next move. Unfortunately, not everyone celebrating your vision genuinely wants to see it succeed. Something. Toxic individuals often use information as ammunition. They plant doubt where confidence once existed. They question your ability before you have even begun. They introduce fear disguised as advice. Something. Sometimes silence protects your purpose better than endless discussion ever could. Observe successful individuals throughout history. Many of them shared their victories only after those victories had become reality. They understood that unfinished goals are fragile. Something. Every unnecessary opinion has the potential to weaken commitment. Every skeptic introduces another obstacle into an already difficult journey. Quiet preparation often produces louder results than constant announcements. The less attention you seek during the process, the more energy remains available for the work itself. Emotional unpredictability also means refusing to allow praise to control you just as much as criticism. Manipulative people understand that compliments can become tools. They flatter you today so they can influence you tomorrow. They praise your generosity until generosity becomes something they expect rather than appreciate. They build your ego only to quietly attach conditions to their approval. If your confidence depends entirely on external validation, you become vulnerable to anyone willing to offer or withhold it. True confidence remains steady whether applause arrives or disappears. The ability to remain centered under pressure creates an invisible presence that others immediately notice. You enter difficult conversations without panic. You hear criticism without collapsing. You receive compliments without becoming arrogant. Your emotional balance no longer swings wildly according to other people's opinions. This consistency confuses toxic personalities because they cannot locate the emotional button they once expected to press. Every failed attempt weakens their confidence while strengthening your position. Many people believe mystery comes from hiding information. Real mystery comes from mastering yourself. When your emotions are no longer available for public control, people stop assuming they know you. They cannot predict your next move because your decisions are guided by reflection instead of impulse. They cannot provoke instant anger because you have learned that peace is more valuable than temporary satisfaction. They cannot manipulate your fears because you no longer build your identity around their opinions. There is freedom in becoming emotionally disciplined. You stop wasting nights replaying conversations that no longer matter. You stop feeling obligated to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. You stop believing that every accusation deserves your attention. Instead, you begin asking a different question before responding. Does this situation deserve my energy? That single question changes everything because energy invested wisely creates growth, while energy invested carelessly creates exhaustion. Toxic people eventually recognize when someone has become emotionally unavailable to manipulation. They notice their usual strategies producing unfamiliar results. The guilt no longer works. The insults no longer provoke. The silent treatment no longer creates desperation. The emotional traps they relied upon for years suddenly stand empty because you no longer rush into them. Your calmness forces them to confront the one battle they never expected to fight, the battle against their own uncertainty, where every attempt to control you quietly reveals how little control they truly possess over themselves. One of the greatest forms of strength is the ability to walk away without looking back. Yet this is the very thing most people struggle to do. They remain in conversations that drain them, relationships that diminish them, and environments that slowly destroy their confidence because they believe leaving is a sign of failure. They convince themselves that one more explanation, one more chance, or one more sacrifice will finally change the other person. But toxic people rarely change because you stay. More often, they become more comfortable because you never leave. Every time you tolerate behavior that violates your peace, you quietly teach others that your boundaries are optional. There is a silent power in refusing to chase what has already chosen to disrespect you. The world teaches people to pursue, to prove, and to persuade. It celebrates persistence in almost every area of life. While persistence has its place, it becomes dangerous when directed toward people who have already shown you who they are. Chasing respect from someone committed to disrespecting you is like trying to fill a broken vessel with water. No matter how much effort you pour into it, the result remains the same. Your energy disappears while the emptiness remains. Toxic individuals often survive because they believe everyone has a breaking point where they will eventually return. They assume that after enough silence, enough guilt, or enough emotional pressure, you will come back asking for understanding. This expectation gives them confidence. They believe they hold the power because they assume your need for connection is stronger than your commitment to self-respect. The moment you quietly walk away without demanding closure or validation, that illusion begins to collapse. Suddenly, they are forced to face something unfamiliar, the possibility that they have permanently lost access to someone they believed would always remain available. Many people confuse closure with healing. They think healing only begins after receiving the perfect apology or hearing the perfect explanation. They wait for conversations that may never happen. They replay memories searching for answers that no longer exist. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward while they remain emotionally trapped in yesterday. The truth is that closure is not always something another person gives you. Sometimes closure is the decision to stop expecting what another person has already proven they cannot provide. Peace often begins the moment expectations finally end. Walking away also requires accepting one uncomfortable truth. Not everyone deserves unlimited opportunities to remain in your life. Society often praises forgiveness, and forgiveness is valuable when it frees your own heart from bitterness. But forgiveness does not require continued access. You can release resentment without reopening the same door that repeatedly led to pain. Wisdom understands that protecting your peace is not revenge. It is responsibility. You are responsible for the atmosphere surrounding your own life. And sometimes that responsibility requires distance instead of discussion. Toxic people often become experts at creating emotional dependency. They convince you that your happiness depends on their approval, that your confidence depends on their acceptance, or that your future depends on their presence. Over time, you begin believing that leaving them means losing part of yourself. But this is one of manipulation's greatest illusions. What you truly lose by staying is your identity. You slowly forget your own voice because you become too busy responding to theirs. You stop asking what brings you peace because every decision revolves around avoiding their disappointment. There is remarkable freedom in realizing that not every battle deserves your participation. Some people invite conflict simply because conflict is the only environment where they feel powerful. They provoke arguments, manufacture misunderstandings, and create unnecessary drama because chaos gives them attention. The greatest disappointment for such people is not losing an argument. It is discovering that no argument will happen at all. When you quietly remove yourself from the situation, you deny them the audience they were counting on. Their strategy collapses because it depended entirely upon your involvement. One of the strongest statements a person can make requires no words whatsoever. It is the decision to leave with dignity. No dramatic announcements, no emotional speeches, no desperate attempts to make someone regret their actions, just quiet departure. This kind of silence carries enormous weight because it communicates confidence rather than desperation. It says that your future is too valuable to remain trapped inside someone else's unhealthy patterns. It reveals that your self-respect has become stronger than your fear of loneliness. Many people remain trapped because they fear being misunderstood. They want everyone to know their intentions before they leave. They hope others will recognize how much they suffered or appreciate how patient they were. But toxic individuals rarely reward honesty with understanding. Instead, they often rewrite the story to protect themselves. They may portray you as selfish, ungrateful, or uncaring. If your decision depends on everyone agreeing with it, you may never find the courage to make it. Emotional maturity means accepting that some people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you explain yourself. Walking away without seeking validation also means releasing the need to win. Too many people stay connected to toxic situations because they want the last word. They want to prove they were right, expose every lie, or force the other person to admit their mistakes. While this desire is understandable, it often becomes another invisible chain. Your attention remains fixed on someone who has already consumed enough of your life. Real victory is not hearing them admit they were wrong. Real victory is building a life so peaceful that their opinion no longer determines your emotional state. Another important lesson is that absence reveals truths that presence often hides. When you constantly remain available, people become accustomed to your effort. They stop noticing your kindness because it has become expected. They stop appreciating your loyalty because they assume it will never disappear. Distance changes perspective. Some people only recognize value after it is no longer accessible. Others reveal that they never valued it at all. Either outcome provides clarity that endless conversations could never achieve. There is also tremendous discipline involved in resisting the urge to return. Loneliness has a way of romanticizing the past. something. The mind remembers familiar moments while quietly forgetting the pain that accompanied them. This is why so many people revisit relationships they once fought desperately to escape. They mistake familiarity for safety. Something. But growth often requires leaving familiar discomfort in exchange for unfamiliar peace. The first feels comfortable because it is known. The second feels uncomfortable because it is new. With time, that unfamiliar peace becomes your new normal. As your confidence grows, you begin understanding that your value does not increase because someone finally recognizes it. Your value existed long before their approval and will continue long after their rejection. This realization changes the way you move through life. You stop begging to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. You stop chasing acceptance because you have accepted your own worth. You stop waiting for permission to protect your peace because you understand that no one else is responsible for guarding it. Toxic people become deeply unsettled by someone who can quietly leave without revenge, without pleading, without seeking applause, and without ever returning to the place where their dignity was repeatedly tested.